Patriot, patriotic, psycho, psychotic, patriot, patriotic, psycho, psychotic. Prologue. The American dream was fevered. The country was waking up. The sheets were tangled and wet. The people were dealing with a sick truth. Part 1. Day of the Protest. Columbus, Ohio. Alex Dill was late to the protest, but it wasn't his fault. He'd planned for traffic. He'd even thought of a clever place to park within walking distance and packed a bag with water, extra masks, hat, and snacks. The problem was his sign. He'd spent too long figuring out what to write, what to scream in all caps at the all-in-blue Lives Matter idiots. A dozen things had come to mind, but there was only room for one slogan on his board. And so here he was, still sitting on his couch in his boxers, staring blankly at his canvas. His phone buzzed with a message in the group text. "Where you at?" Deshawn texted. "You here," Kiara echoed. "Come on, bro," Reginald texted. He picked the phone off his cluttered coffee table, scrolled through the messages, and began to type an excuse. "My bad, he began, then deleted it. He typed, "Yo, you won't believe what," and held the backspace button down until it was gone. Finally, he sent a passive-aggressive, "On my way," which had auto-corrected from the more chill OMW. Wasn't there an app for this? Like an excuse generator? He'd have to look that up later tonight. For now, Alex dressed and headed out the door with a blank sign under his arm. He got in his VW and zipped away from his little condo. He took the highway south and got to Goodale Park, the place he planned to leave his car, 30 minutes after he was supposed to meet his friends in front of the State House. There were other protesters here, too, people parking near the city park and walking like him. He even saw a few signs with slogans he recognized from his internet research, ones he'd rejected in favor of something original. Well, blank was original. Damn it, he needed to come up with something soon. As he scanned the street for an open parking spot, Alex saw a group of men wearing red hats with "Make America Great Again" stitched in white letters. He smiled at the counter-protesters, fumbled through the password on his phone, and pulled up his streaming app before rolling down the windows and pressing play. The YG track blared, "Fuck Donald Trump! Fuck Donald Trump! Yeah, nigga, fuck Donald Trump! It's for our people! Yeah, fuck Donald Trump!" The rap song was a big middle finger to anyone who supported the Cheeto-in-Chief, an opus that said perfectly how half the country felt. The three young white guys in red hats turned and squinted through the windshield at Alex. They wore collared shirts, khakis, and penny loafers, as if they'd nipped out of boarding school to let those libtards know what was what. Alex stared back as he passed by, wishing they would say something, do something, challenge him. But the red hats only looked as he rapped the lyrics and bounced around in his seat. Cowards. There was a spot on Buttles, the north side of Goodale Park. He passed it by a car length, stopped, and shifted into reverse. His 2009 model didn't have a backup camera, so he put a hand on the passenger headrest and looked back, prepared to parallel park. He jammed on the brakes. What in the fuck? How'd that... There, in the spot he swore was empty a moment ago, between a big-body Mercedes and a huge lifted truck, sat a Dodge Challenger. The same make, model, and color used in the Charlottesville car attack. He remembered because until a news alert popped on his phone in 2017, he was going to buy one with the same color and options. A 2010. The thought he liked the same car as a murderer made him open the article. Reading about James Alex Fields Jr. purposely driving his car into a crowd of peaceful protesters had changed Alex. He wasn't better, just different. He still tried to cheat on his girlfriends. He still bought expensive sneakers to post online and return the next day. But he was awake now, aware. Only white folks could be very fine people and support a murderer. Alex shook his head. An odd feeling had crept over him as he stared at the empty American muscle car. He noticed baby shoes hanging from its rearview mirror, identical to the ones hanging from Alex's own mirror, his little cousin's Nikes. Suddenly, he became convinced that was not a car, but the car he would have bought in an alternate reality instead of this VW. Though he could drive away, he felt compelled to get out and run. He might have done just that if someone didn't beep from behind. There were not one, but 2 cars back there. He put the VW in drive and shook it off. Back on the hunt, he circled the park once more before spotting a gap of visible curb on Denison Ave and pulled in without incident. Alex got out in a hurry and spread his blank protest sign on the warm car hood before digging into his bag for a fat Sharpie. He outlined, then filled in blocky, sharp-edged letters. Defund CPD. Satisfied with his quick work, Alex raised the sign high and hollered, "Defund CPD! Defund CPD!" Nobody responded, but it felt right, so he put his mask on and set out for the State House. The closer he got to High Street, the main drag that connects the Ohio State University and Uptown District, the thicker the crowd became with protesters. They were all there. The suburban moms in their sensible running shoes, the brothers with beautiful dreads and lithe, vegetable-fueled bodies, the old-school hippies and the new-school ones, too, the office types and biker dudes. Everyone was masked up. Like one of the protest sign ideas Alex read online, it was not black versus white, it was everyone versus racists, and that felt really good. He could feel a collective energy by the time the Ohio State House finally came into view. He pulled out his phone and, returning to the long group text, typed, "Hey, almost there. Where y'all at?" "AD. Right in front," Deshawn texted. "To the right," Kiara wrote. "Damn, bro. We're waiting," Reginald texted. On the corner of West Long and High, Alex saw the group of young white guys in red hats from earlier. They were across the crowded street. He could see their ruddy cheeks and small, hard eyes staring at him. They conferred and pointed and seemed to argue amongst themselves. Alex wished he weren't alone. If he could have anyone with him right now, it would be Frank. His older cousin was one of the blacks in so-called black-on-black crime, and the first to explain it was just plain old crime. He sold drugs and shot at people not because he was African American, but because he was an American and there's nothing more apple pie than being a gangster. And if you didn't hear that, Cousin Frank, or Crip Frankie as the neighborhood called him, would quote you statistics about white-on-white crime, also just crime, and if you really persisted with your argument, he might shoot you. But Cousin Frank wasn't here. He rarely left his neighborhood. Shit, he rarely left his porch. The red hats had finished with their pointing and conferring. One of them yanked his hat a little lower, and they all began to cross the street and head in Alex's direction. He thought about being jumped by the men, about the possibility of the whole thing being on video. He wondered if blaring YG had been the wrong move, and if now he would pay for it with an ass-whooping. He remembered his own group of friends and what might happen if he ran into the red hats with backup. He was up for a fair fight, but not this. Not humiliation on high. Alex saw a couple of cops and headed for them. He didn't run, but wanted to. He looked over a shoulder and, seeing the red hats were still coming, moved faster and narrowly missed walking into a stroller. The 2 uniformed officers were female and stone-faced as he approached. Both were the color of dark chocolate and didn't acknowledge his presence as he stared at their faces. He saw the gleaming badges, shining patent leather brim of their hats and holstered pistols. Their expressions of indifference killed him. It was bad enough he was almost literally running to the police. The least they could do is say the first word. Whatever. "Excuse me. Hello, officers," he said, but they didn't respond. "Hello?" A moment passed as the crowd surged, people looking as the black man at the BLM-planned protest interacted with the opposition, and they said nothing. Finally, one cop pointed at his sign. "Oh, I'm sorry. My partner and I thought we might show you what defunding looks like. We were going to walk away, but thought you looked a little panicked," the officer on the left said. Dixon, according to her badge. "Who panicked? Not me. Them MAGA boys over there are following you. What you say about their president?" Alex judged the pair to be fresh recruits. He'd read the city was actively recruiting more female officers. These 2 looked young, a few years older than him at best. "Nobody ran. I walked over here to ask if blue lives and Smurf lives are the same thing. I mean, if all lives matter, so do Smurf lives." He smiled and looked back to where he'd last seen the red hats. They were gone. For now, "Move along," Officer Dixon said, "and we will serve and protect your little ass if them MAGA boys jump on you. That is, until you defund us." Officer Dixon had manicured fingernails. They were clear with white tips, a little peek of her off-duty humanity. She hooked a thumb on either side of her belt, stuck her chest out a little, and looked in the opposite direction. "Move along? They're the ones who are violent. Aren't you going to do anything? Say anything? They're coming back." Sister or not, she was a police officer. Her mannerisms in that uniform and attitude were all cop. It didn't matter she looked like the girls he went to high school with, or that she probably listened to the same music he did. She was a cop, a part of the system he was here to protest. "I said move along." "Thank you, sister," he growled, and walked away. Whatever. If he got jumped and seriously injured tonight, he would sue the shit out of CPD. That would defund them. What were their names again? One was Dixon. He looked around. The red hats were nowhere in sight, which made him feel worse. They could pop out at any time. Shit. 4 blocks and he'd be on the Ohio State House steps where he hoped his friends were still waiting. 4 blocks, and he could stop worrying about 6 red fists, 3 red hats, and 1 beat down. Raising his sign again, he stepped quick and joined a growing chant and wedged himself in among the marchers where he figured it was safer. "Say his name. George Floyd." "Say her name. Breonna Taylor." As they passed a blockade lined with police, a trumpeter played the Darth Vader theme from Star Wars. The crowd burst into laughter, and the police, arms folded and scowling, pretended not to hear the music. That felt like a victory, and the mood ebbed from begging to demanding justice. All the killing, all the violence, all the indifference toward the suffering of Black people at the hands of police, all of it made him crazy. He hated them, those supporting the president, for causing him to hate. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice, sure. But the arc of a billy club is short, and it bends toward injustice. Those asking for greatness again couldn't say when that was. They were desperate to put us all back to sleep. Alex would not return to darkness. Not ever. When there was a break in the chant, he screamed, "Defund CPD! Defund CPD!" The people around him took up the chorus, "Defund CPD! Defund CPD!" The energy was thrilling. He almost forgot about the red hats following him. Deshawn, Kiara, and Reginald could wait. His fist pummeled the sky. His feet stamped the earth. His heart swelled with actual hope. Look at all these people, these white people, these black, brown, gay, straight, blonde, red, blue, and purple-haired people. He saw the faces of allies, of those who also had enough of bloody cell phone footage, of lies and outright racism coming from the center of our democracy. The fists pumping, voices demanding in unison. The shoulder-to-shoulder demonstration of no made him hope for the first time in so many quiet months. After a block of his chant, someone called, "No justice, no peace," and they marched to that. His heart was so full, his soul so free. So when he saw himself on the other side of High Street, he almost didn't recognize his nut-brown complexion, slight shoulders, and skinny legs. He was thin like his father. Not bad, given how people dressed these days. He would have looked ridiculous in baggy, oversized shit. But he was born in 1995, and skinny clothes were perfectly timed for him. And so he did not recognize himself at first in the big cargo shorts, nor did he expect the billowing army green t-shirt. He was especially surprised by the long AR-15-style gun in his grasp. The reflection that wasn't a reflection, the alternate, the him that wasn't. The man across the street holding a gun couldn't be him, and yet there he was. Fear crawled up his leg and squeezed past his sphincter. In the dark, in the acidic sizzle of his bubbling guts, it scrabbled up and scaled his spine until stopping in his tightening throat. A scream. Alex heard it before he realized the choked sound came from him. It was like cringing at a recording of your voice, but far, far worse. He was not embarrassed by the person who made it. He was absolutely terrified for them, for himself, and also of himself. The self across the street turning a peaceful protest into anything but. A shot. a sizzling hot piece of metal flying through the air. Cargo Shorts was struggling to bring his gun up, fighting the crowd around him in a blur of arms and legs. He fired again, and the round went low. A brown-haired woman's pale shin disappeared in a cloud of blood and bone. She went down with a shriek as a second person came streaking at Cargo Shorts with a raised skateboard. He was a little white guy with a fierce mane of red hair, the type of kid that smoked weed on the quad and threw a frisbee around with his shaggy friends while everyone else went to class. The non-confrontational sort, but goddamn if he wasn't swinging that skateboard, really going for it with the hard edge of his makeshift weapon. The skater took a bullet in the groin, stomach, chest, and head. Bang, 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 and the gun came all the way up, horizontal and pointed at the rest of them. No one and everyone. AR-15. Alex didn't see the skater fall. He'd seen enough. He took off and ran in any direction except where the bullets were coming from, tearing past a couple dragging a crying child from the husband's shoulders, leaping over a dog with a leash flapping behind it and toward the safety of a parking lot. He would crawl under a car if he could dodge the chaos. Every step felt like eternity. More shots. As he ran and cleared another obstacle, he felt something punch into him. It was like a car had hit him, but High Street was shut down. His breath had been sucked out of his lungs and he was no longer running. He was falling. First, his shoulder ground into the pavement, then his head bounced off the pavement. Then there was nothing. Part 2. 3 days before the riot, Columbus, Ohio. Al Dill looked at his phone in disbelief. Was this piece of shit Clement firing him on a Tuesday? Who fires someone on a Tuesday? A Friday was smarter. The newly unemployed could absorb the news over the weekend. But a fucking Tuesday? They were just asking for trouble. Then again, they were all working from home now. Al couldn't exactly make a scene in his own house. Effective immediately! The supervisor droned on, and Al, knowing everything he would say, couldn't believe he didn't hang up. He no longer had to put up with this bullshit. The CYA, the cover your ass by reading a legal disclosure crap Al himself had done to other people before he was demoted to phone associate. I need you to log out. Al knew the deal. He had written the playbook Clement was reading from. Worse still, Al had hired the man off the street to take calls and helped him get promoted. Now this. Al was being let go and read the words he'd written, gotten approved by legal, and distributed to over 30 other supervisors to guide them through this difficult part of their jobs. The only good news was how smooth the process he wrote flowed. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Human Resources, which can be reached at... The fuck? Clement knew damn well Al had the number. He wanted to interrupt or hang up, but couldn't. There was strange satisfaction in being dispatched with a weapon of his own making. And as you know, Al, we have a zero-tolerance policy for hate here at C-Expert Company. Unfortunately, your social media posts don't reflect our... Now Al did interrupt. Hold on, Clement. Say that again. My social media posts? What now? There was silence on the line. Al could imagine his protege attempting to choose his words carefully. There was an art to firing someone. Al would always go fast, rip the Band-Aid off, but not so fast the person being let go had no clue why, which led to lawsuits. It was also better to speak in the past tense and make it clear there was no chance of a different outcome. But he would also share something the person knew was a fireable offense. So Clement was probably trying to freestyle his own script now. The Google slides in front of him would not provide direction here. We were made aware of social media activity that violates our policies about hate speech, Clement said. Again, we have a zero-tolerance policy, Al. After touching base with HR, the decision was made to terminate your employment effective immediately. So again, go ahead and log out if you haven't already. What activity? Did something I posted get me fired, Clement? I didn't realize my cats were such a hot topic. What's going on here? Again, there was silence. Look, Al, I don't care who you vote for. I don't. Personally, I'm not a fan, but this is America. You can support who or whatever you want. But that Proud Boys stuff is... He hesitated. There are people here who no longer feel comfortable working with you. They are a Southern Poverty Law Center designated hate group. Therefore, your ongoing support of the group falls into our zero tolerance policy, and so, yeah, I know, effective immediately. I wrote the slide you are reading from, C. What post? I don't even know what you are talking about right now, okay? But he did know, and the horror of being discovered made his stomach queasy. I post my cats. The most inoffensive thing on the internet. The only thing we can all agree on. How is Mr. Pickles getting me shit-canned right now? Al stood. The mug of coffee on his desk steamed, but he was getting colder and colder inside. Soon he would make a scene in his own apartment. The walls were thin. He could hear the guy's toddler next door crying at all times of day and night. He was going to do some mourning himself. This was happening at the worst possible time, in the middle of a national recession and personal crisis. I'm going to read something unspeakable. Then I'm never going to talk to or think about you ever again, Al. You're done, and so am I with you, Clement said, almost growled. You should also know we have screenshots of all this. Okay, here goes. Muslims have a problem with inbreeding. They tend to marry their first cousins, and that is a major problem here because when you have mentally damaged inbreds, which not all Muslims are but a disproportionate number are, and you have a hate book called the Quran, you end up with a perfect recipe for mass murder. Al stuttered. Clement continued. We brought roads and infrastructure to India, and they are still using them as toilets. Our criminals built nice roads in Australia, but Aboriginals keep using them as a bed. The next time someone bitches about colonization, the correct response is, you're welcome. Al cleared his throat. I didn't say those things. Al cleared his throat. I didn't say those things. You didn't have the, Clement paused, gumption to. You posted link after link to Gavin McInnes, Get Off My Lawn podcast episodes. Again, screenshots. Here's another quote from that bastion of thought. Maybe the reason I'm sexist is because women are dumb. No, I'm just kidding, ladies, but you do tend to not thrive in certain areas. Like writing. Al was back to sitting. His palms felt slick. Yes, you did. You set up a fake little Twitter account, but you follow yourself. Interesting choice. People here found out, feel uncomfortable, and you can find a job somewhere else. The regular Clement tone returned, and the corporate representative said, Do you have any questions? Didn't wait for a response and finished by adding, I'm sending you a prepaid box. You can keep the monitor, Al. It's cheap. Send everything else back. If the PC or headset are damaged, we'll take it out of your check. Good luck in your future endeavors. And hung up. Al stared at the phone for a while and felt numb. Had that really happened? Did he actually get fired? And on Tuesday? It came out of nowhere, and yet he knew something was off. The way Clement had been treating him, keeping him at a distance for days. It made sense now. His boss knew he was going to fire Al days ago. Al didn't log out of his work computer. He just scrapped it off his desk like a heap of garbage. It felt good until the wires kept everything from crashing down onto the carpeted floor. The keyboard and monitor hung limp. Giving up, not wanting to smash the electronics and create a mess for himself, he tried Candace's phone. Nothing. Fuck. He needed her. She would say, Al, it's going to be okay. Promise. Things are going to be fine. Do you need me to pick you up something while I'm out? Food? But Candace didn't answer her phone. It was all true. He had posted those Gavin links. But it was his right as an American. Free speech. And sure, he could understand there was none at work, but he didn't work for Twitter. He hadn't even used his real name, for fuck's sakes. How could he get fired for having a political opinion? It wasn't his fault if people from work followed him. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. He thought about suing, but he couldn't afford a lawyer. He thought about those billboards on the highway. We don't get paid unless you do, and did some Googling. He scrolled and read and watched YouTube video after video. Expert Company had violated his rights. It took him the better part of the day and some of the night, but he felt certain. Expert Company had indeed violated his guaranteed rights. Then he wondered about who, precisely, did this to him. Not Clement, who was just doing his job. What unpatriotic, Obama-loving piece of liberal shit did this to him? Who turned him in? It was late, So Al took a shower and ordered a pizza. When the food showed up, he sat chewing mindlessly atop a couch he still owed money on watching Fox News. Numbers, his own expenses, rolled around in his head and he started to form a plan. He would post an ad for a roommate tomorrow morning. He could give up the bedroom and sleep on the couch for a while. No biggie. His car had been sitting since March. He could downsize it to something with a lower payment. He'd have to do that with a recent pay stub, which meant soon. Al went for a third slice when a story on Fox caught his attention. Breaking news. A teenager in Wisconsin was protecting private property at a Black Lives Matter riot and had to shoot some people. He'd protected himself with an AR-15. The boy was white and Al was black, but there was something familiar there. His spirit. The teenager was an American hero. He went out there when grown men were too afraid. If Al had a kid someday, he wished for a young patriot like this. Al found a link to the emerging story online and texted Candace. "Babe, our future kid. Al." "What?" "We talked about this, I know. I'm sorry. But I've had a day, Candy. Why didn't you pick up for me, babe? You lost the right to call me that. My name is Candace. What do you want? Civility? That too much to ask?" An animated ellipsis appeared. She was trying to decide what to say. First Clement, now Candace. He watched and waited as his ex-girlfriend likely typed and retyped a response. She was like that. Considerate of other people's feelings even if they didn't deserve her caution. He always liked that about her. Years ago, when they first got together, she'd done the same thing to a needy ex, the guy before Al. Who was she with now? Who was watching her untangle from him? Maybe from her bed or her couch or her front seat where she once invited him to fully recline and close his eyes in a dark parking lot. Al thought about all that and felt hollow. "Al, go to bed," she texted. "You're not even going to ask," he texted. "About what?" "My day. I had a bad one, okay? Really bad." "No, I'm not. I'm going to let you live your life and I want to live mine. Okay? You bitch." He'd hit send before even realizing. The word was ugly and misspelled and raw. He didn't mean it. Not really. But there it was. Screenshot ready. Why did he always do this to himself? The ellipsis appeared again. He knew she would be hurt. Incensed, sure, but hurt. He knew her well. Tears would be streaming down her face right about now, and she would want to know why he tried to hurt her like that. How there could once be so much between them, and how they could end up here. You small, tiny man, with your warped politics and deranged appreciation of Donald Trump. You loser. You 90s bred and make America great again fed idiot. I know what happened today, Al. You got fucking fired. Everyone knows. And let me tell you something. You wouldn't survive in 1950s America. Forget that you're black. Which you are, stupid. Blackety black and systematic racism is real. You aren't man enough to live in the 50s, Al. Those men, real men, kept a damn job. They were sole providers. Do you understand what that means? The woman doesn't work. You can't keep a roof over your head, much less mine and a couple of kids. You're a fucking joke. My grandfather, the so-called greatest generation you MAGA look up to, thinks you're all pussies. You buy cases of bullets for nothing and patrol peaceful protests with your stupid guns, and everyone knows you won't do shit. Do us all a favor. Please, make America great again and fucking kill yourself. Okay? Don't text or call me ever. Also, call me a bitch again and we'll see who's a bitch when I send my brothers over there. Bitch! The floor opened up and Al fell through. He landed at the bottom of a very dark place. Down in the filth, he sat cross-legged and tried not to cry. Then the tears he had pictured pouring down Candace's face made their way down his. The misery felt physical, like he had been pushed down into this hole by something evil. First Clement, now Candace. People he had helped and loved betrayed him. And how convenient in this cancel culture to discard someone like Al. Freedom, he knew, wasn't free. No, being a patriot wasn't always popular either. Ask Joseph Allicock or any of the Sons of Liberty considered terrorists in their day. Free speech, the right to bear arms, freedom in general. It all had to be protected, fought for. 2 days before the riot. The next morning, Al did some day drinking. Why not? He was freshly unemployed. He went to the World of Beer, Dubia OB as nobody called it, near the Columbus airport. There was a patio on the second floor that faced CMH International he liked. He waited in the parking lot for the place to open at 11 and had to knock on the glass for the hostess to notice him. She was a decent-looking blonde in her 20s. She led him through the empty dining room up the steep stairs to the second floor. A long minute of silence, no chit-chat, as he stared at the back of her head and congratulated himself for not focusing instead on her ass, which was at near eye level during the climb. The patio was nice. Everything was made out of metal, wood, or brick and looked sturdy. There was a second bar, too. The waitresses didn't need to go up and down the tall stairs. He was alone, but the vibe was great. Always was. He used to bring Candace here. She ate Japanese sushi, he drank German beer, and together they pretended to make travel plans. His $38K before taxes and her dental hygienist salary would take them globe-trotting. First to Japan in the fall of next year. Definitely. And then to Germany and Ireland. Candace was half black and apparently part German and Irish, a fact they only discovered after Al got her one of those genetic ancestry kits for Christmas. He was thrilled, but she didn't seem to care. Candace should be proud. His were a slave people, downtrodden. Hers were conquerors, poets. He sometimes thought about how much of his and how much of her, well, good genes, their children might get. It wasn't his skin color he objected to. Not really. It was the legacy. Why didn't the slaves fight back? He'd never allow himself to be forced into anything, much less labor. He'd encouraged Candace to get in touch with the European part of her identity, but she'd only changed the subject. It was like she didn't understand herself, like she was confused. Al ordered a Guinness, his favorite, and sipped. The dark stout was delicious, so he ordered another, and a fourth, too. When the buzz kicked in, he pulled his phone out. He searched for his brothers, the Proud Boys, because this was his real account. The one he used to comment on baby pictures and post his Dodge Challenger after a Sunday wash. The same make, model, and color as the Patriot James Alex Fields Jr. used in the Charlottesville car attack. Ha! An homage nobody ever noticed. Sometimes, when he had a beer or two before heading out to wash his American maid, he pretended it was the Charger, the one Fields used. He imagined what it might be like to clean the car on that day. How it would feel to use the hose until cherry red blood turned pink, and which sharp pieces of the fender, bumper, and grill would tear a piece of flesh or hair off the lazy, hippie backsides of the Antifa crowd. It would be a pleasure to detail that piece of Detroit and Virginia history. "Do you want another one?" The waitress was suddenly there. Al hadn't noticed her. She was blonde, appeared to be in her 20s, and a little more attractive than the hostess. He squinted at her. Wait, was that the hostess? Had she put on an apron to sub in as a waitress or something? He squinted once more and saw she was a different girl. This one had lipstick. He looked down at his empty glass. "Yes, please," then added, "What's your name?" But she was already gone, also uninterested. Back to his phone. He saw a meme. It was Neo from the Matrix movie holding his hand up and catching a bunch of bullets in midair. The caption, "I have an immune system. No vaccines needed." Al laughed out loud, reposted, and felt good. It was probably the first time he put anything real, anything true on his personal page. He put the phone down and watched as a plane took off, an American Airlines flight. He could tell by the colors. A few minutes later, and a plane landed. This one was blue, jet blue. When his phone buzzed, Al unlocked it and saw a comment below his meme. Good. He knew some of his friends voted for Trump, but were too afraid to post things like this themselves. Maybe they were cheering him on. Al saw a comment from his mother. "You are fully vaccinated. This is embarrassing." His heart sank as LOLs and cackling emojis from friends and family filled the comments section below his meme. Also, a bitch. His mother. Sad but true. He ordered another beer and drank it fast. When it was time for a fifth one, Al waved for the waitress, and when she, staring down at her own phone near the bar, didn't notice, he waved harder. She saw him when, a little drunk, he misjudged and failed to put his elbow back on the chair arm. He half fell out of the metal chair. She shoved the phone back in her apron and sped to him. "What the fuck? I am going to wave my arm off. Shit." "Sorry, sir. What can I get you, sir?" "I'm not a sir. I'm Al. I asked your name earlier, but you walked away. Whatever. Get me another beer." "Come on, brah. Don't be like that." Al rubbed his elbow. The waitress had put a little twang on that bro. In fact, she hadn't said bro at all. She'd said bruh. Bruh? "Don't do that." "What?" He looked at her closer now, saw her blue eyes, curly hair done up like the girls he went to high school with, the sneakers, the gold necklace with her name spelled out. Brittany. Her curvy figure cinched into too tight jeans. The type of shape that would catch the eye of every guy he went to high school with. She would, he knew, undoubtedly be accustomed to the black male gaze. Some white guys might even consider her fat. It likely shaped the people she dated, or at least who wanted to date her, and probably the company she kept. He thought all this in an instant and said, "Don't do that. That. I'm a brother, not yours." "Whatever, homie," she said, turned on her heels and said over a shoulder, "Guinness, right? Like the white boys. Yeah, I'll be back." "Okay, Rachel Dolezal, okay. She's from Idaho and blacker than you. Sir." Al sat waiting for his drink. He had a comeback and questions. Who did this person, this clearly white person, think she was exactly? A sister? Because why? She had a little shape to her? Shit. He thought bitterly and spat on the floor. He transcended blackness. He was a patriot, an American. If he acted white, it was the white alongside red and blue. Bitch. He spat on the floor again. The deck. When he looked up, a large man was staring down at him. The guy wore a black suit and he was big. "You can't do that. Listen, buddy, you've got to go." "For spitting outside? Why?" The man said, "Stop being an asshole. Brittany told me what you said. Go. Get out before I throw you out, bro." Then started clearing the table as if Al already left. One day before the riot, Al reclined the driver's seat and drank the rest of a half-empty bottle of water. Time and non-alcoholic fluid would sober him up. The World of Beer parking lot was a lonely place at 1 in the afternoon, but so was a jail cell. He'd rather not get picked up for DUI again. The fines and court costs were the real punishment, and the last thing he needed right about now. He unlocked his phone, logged into Twitter under his previously anonymous profile, and stopped. People at work knew he was a patriot. There was no sense in hiding it anymore. What did he have to lose? His job? His girlfriend? Both were long gone. He went to Facebook, his Facebook, and right to a local chapter of the Proud Boys. A message with 7 ground rules of membership appeared. The 6th, be unapologetic and unashamed of representing the organization's values. Until now, Al had been ashamed. He'd only ever interacted with the Proud Boys secretly. Not anymore. He pressed join group for all his friends and family to see. He wanted to do that for years. He scrolled the page until he got a direct message. "Welcome, brother. To be vetted and remain in the group, please upload and post a video of yourself reciting our first degree. Say exactly this into the camera. My name is full name, I'm from city state, and I am a Western chauvinist who refuses to apologize for creating the modern world." Al read the message twice. This would be it. There would be no turning back. The internet was forever. He sat up straight in his seat, sucked in a breath, then aimed the phone at himself and complied. Finally, he posted and waited. If anyone else was online, they might, "Welcome, brother. PB for life. Another proud chauvinist. Congratulations on joining, brother." They swarmed his post. Other men, real men, wishing him well and welcoming him among them. His brothers seemed overjoyed, and so was he. His heart swelled as message after message appeared below his declaration video. Then people asked if he would join them at the protest. Apparently, BLM was planning a big march right down High Street. His brothers were commenting, "Dollars to donuts, it turns violent. For sure. We'll be ready. Hope they are. Fuck yeah. If you can legally carry, please come armed. Locked and loaded, brother." Al would be there. There was no question. He would be there to protect the private property of business owners and keep himself and others safe. Sobered by the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, Al started his car, let the big engine idle for a while, then revved it for fun. He pulled out of the bar's parking lot at a crawl, then gunned it and squealed the tires as he merged into traffic. A homeless man on the corner shouted, "Fuck you!" as he passed, but Al didn't care. His mission was clear. Go to the so-called protest and help keep order. Al checked the PB page at a light. Someone had infiltrated a local Antifa page, and they too would be at the march. The thought of confronting far-right extremists made Al smile. When another member posted proof, a screenshot, that Antifa would be there and armed, the page went crazy. Al wasted no time and drove to a gun store where he purchased a Level 3A soft armor vest and 3 boxes of .223 ammo. That left him $20 short of the rent, but C-Expert Company owed him another paycheck, so he would be fine. He loaded the vest and bullets into his trunk and went home to rest up. If these anti-America, anti-Trump, anti-hetero, anti-men with confidence beta fucks wanted war, he would bring it. Day of the riot, Al Dill never enlisted in the army because Barack Hussein Obama couldn't command him. He didn't join the Columbus Police Department because Mayor Coleman married a lush. And while the idea had occurred, Al wouldn't run for public office himself because President Trump was already waging a secret battle against the cabal and its deep state collaborators. But there was a problem. The president, as called by God as he was, only wanted to expose the malefactors and send them to Guantanamo Bay. Al wanted to send them to hell, screaming. And so that wouldn't work, right? Him blasting away at the demon Democrats while Donnie, ever the statesman, cut deals. Al loaded .223 rounds into his M&P's magazine. The AR was a growing symbol of American freedom. A shot sounded like a gong of the Liberty Bell. The Sport II held 30 bullets. He'd soaked them in garlic water overnight in the fridge. They were cold in his grip and harder to handle than expected. The symbolism was rich. If some medical examiner had to pull the stinking slugs out of a body, the autopsy would make its way to the Clintons. The blood drinkers. They would understand Al knew the truth too, but only if he had to. Violence chipped away at Trump supporters' credibility, and God knows those highly edited gotcha videos of rednecks being asked tough questions at rallies were bad enough. There were some real crazies out there, and Al didn't want to compound the problem. No, he was strictly playing defense tonight. He put his new vest on and found the only full-length mirror in his apartment. He wore a camo green t-shirt and big cargo shorts. Large because the pockets were roomy and accommodated his extra magazines. He stood there, waning afternoon light spilling over a shoulder, held the AR-15 across his chest and smiled. He was doing something. He was out in front and ready to put his ass on the line for what he believed in. For freedom. After putting his boots on, he headed downstairs. In the apartment parking lot, a family saw him loading up, saw the gun. Al tipped his red hat toward the couple and their children. They looked at him momentarily, then away. He called, "Don't believe the media. I'm not the one you need to be afraid of." Before putting the car in drive, he checked Facebook Messenger. He was supposed to meet up with 3 of his brothers on the corner of West Long and High Street. They wouldn't be armed. He was the muscle. He sped away from his apartment and got to Goodale Park, where he planned to leave his Dodge 30 minutes before the Proud Boys countermarch would begin. They would be gathering in front of the Ohio State House. Plenty of time to get himself and charges through the crowd. When he saw 3 red hats, black Fred Perry polo shirts with narrow yellow stripes, and the company's yellow laurel wreath logo, Al smiled and waved through the windshield. He rolled down the window, calling, "Proud Western chauvinist here. Hold on while I park, boys." There was a spot on Buttles, the north side of Goodale Park. He used the Challenger's backup camera and parallel parked between a big-body Mercedes and a huge lifted truck. When he looked up, there was a VW Jetta preparing to back into the space he just snagged. The same make, model, and color he was planning to buy a few years ago until a news alert caught his attention. Charlottesville attack. Al had vacationed there, and he liked the car in the picture. Reading about James sacrificing self for country had changed Al. He was better now. He'd researched and rationalized until there was no room left for liberal lies in his head. He now loved his country and appreciated what the white man did here and in Europe. They made the world he and other brown people lived in and mostly enjoyed, like it or not. Al shook his head. An odd feeling crept over him as he stared at the VW. Suddenly, he became convinced that was not a car but the car he would have bought in an alternate reality instead of this Dodge. He couldn't see who was driving. The windows had a heavy black tint, but he imagined a different version of himself behind the wheel. The man who kept scrolling in 2017 and would keep right on living in the untruth. The VW drove away and the moment passed. So too the strangeness. He remembered the task at hand and popped the trunk. Moment of the riot. Shoulder to shoulder with his brothers, flag fluttering, crimson MAGA hat sitting high on his head, vest protecting his heart. A copy of the Constitution in his pocket, worn and highlighted, read and reread. Al parted the crowd ahead of the three men behind him. They had chosen not to bring weapons. For what reason he didn't know, but his mission was clear. Get them to the state capitol where the other 100 Proud Boys were waiting. There was a time in this country when being called boy would have been an insult. Now it was a compliment. He was a part of something larger than himself. His heart swelled with purpose. This was the right thing, the right place for him to be. As they got closer to High Street, the main drag that connects the Ohio State University and Uptown District, the crowd got thick with libtards. They were all there. The suburban moms in their overpriced running shoes, the brothers with dreads that smelled of patchouli, the old-school hippies and the new-school ones, the office types, all misguided and strange-looking to his eye. He could feel a dark undercurrent of evil energy by the time the Ohio State House finally came into view. Pressing the stock of his AR to his chest, Al stepped quickly as the chanting began. Say his name. George Floyd. Say her name. Breonna Taylor. Al motioned for the guys behind him to join, then shouted back. We, back! Boys in blue! We, back! Boys in blue! White, black, green, purple! You should too! In response, as they passed a blockade lined with police, a trumpeter played the Darth Vader theme from Star Wars. The crowd burst into laughter, and the police, arms folded and scowling, pretended not to hear the insult. Al didn't blame them. Suggesting the police, all police, were the same as stormtroopers felt unnecessary. Sure, there were a few bad apples out there, but most of these guys were heroes. That was when his mood went from determined to furious. All the rioting, all the violence, all the anger toward police at the hands of people like this. All of it made him crazy. He hated them for causing him to hate. When there was a break in the chant, someone screamed, "Defund! CPD! Defund! CPD!" The people around them took up the chorus, "Defund! CPD! Defund! CPD!" Al tried to scream his message back, but it was drowned out with the hatred coming from these Antifa-loving BLM morons. He was burning inside. Look at all these people, these unpatriotic, unappreciative people, these black, brown, gay, straight, and purple-haired self-serving assholes. He saw the faces of enemies, the faces of those who delighted in bloody cell phone footage of a wayward cop making a mistake. These were the kind of people that refused forgiveness. After another block, someone called, "No justice, no peace," to which Al had no chant, no response that could be expressed in words. He heard himself scream, "You want to talk all that shit," at nobody in particular and everyone. "You want to talk all that shit," he shouted at everyone there, Clement, Candace, and all the people who had discarded him. "You want to talk all that shit." People were too close. He could feel their elbows scrapping his and the ends of someone's long hair as they passed. "Back up! Back the fuck up!" he yelled at the crowd. He jostled and they jostled back, pushed and he pushed. The person ahead of him whipped around to face Al. He was a little white guy with a fierce mane of red hair who nodded to the people around him. "What the fuck, dude?" "Move," Al said, and kept stepping. The guy was holding a skateboard. He wore a "Fuck Trump" t-shirt. Hey, stop pushing! Al did not stop. He attempted to push past when someone beside the skateboard kid said, "Get that motherfucker!" Then a shot. Some idiot had bumped him, and Al realized he had squeezed the trigger, almost blew his foot off. What in the hell? Someone else reached for his gun. He struggled to bring the weapon up, fought the crowd around him in a blur of arms and legs. He fired again, and the round went low. A woman's pale shin disappeared in a cloud of blood and bone. She went down shrieking as a second person came at Al with a raised skateboard. The redhead. Damn if he wasn't swinging that skateboard, really trying to take Al's head off. The expression on his red face was pure. Fury, hate, and determination all wrapped into one caustic emotion. Despite the superior firepower in Al's own hands, he felt a pang of fear deep inside. He'd never been targeted like this. He'd been in fistfights before, but this was nothing like that. The other guy meant to kill him, exterminate him. Al had never before been an object of violent desire. There was no fear in the other man's eyes, and that scared the absolute shit out of Al. He just started pulling the trigger. Bang, 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 and the gun came all the way up. Al looked around. His brothers were gone. He was alone. As the AR exhaled, he looked around and saw people running. He looked down and saw bodies. Someone was crawling away from him and leaving a trail of blood in little gushing squirts. An artery, he thought. I'm sorry. He put the gun down, lay it on the pavement like a sacrament. He put his hands in his pockets and walked in a tight circle. I'm sorry. Police sirens were coming. He touched the thin blue line American flag patch velcroed to his vest. He hated to waste their time. He supposed they had to show up, but this would be such a waste. He wasn't a criminal. They could be out arresting rapists and murderers. They were already taking so much shit because of the media. Jeez. This was embarrassing. He felt bad, sorry. He'd have to explain he was one of the good guys backing them up, backing the blue. They'd understand. He was standing his ground. Someone reached for his weapon. He had to defend himself. Had to. They were trying to kill him. He thought about that for a moment. They were trying to kill him. A smile crept across his face. Trying.